Guys, today our session is on muscle physiology. So, when we take the functions of muscle tissue, the main functions of muscle tissue is contraction and relaxation of muscles. So, we can take four main functions of muscle tissue. They are produce body movements and stabilize body positions and store and move substance within the body and they generate heat. So, for that functions, there are four main properties of muscle tissue. They are electrical excitability, contractility, extensibility, and elasticity. So when we take electrical excitability, so the property of both muscles and nerve cells have the function to respond to certain stimuli. They produce electrical signals, which are called action potential. So these action potential go and stimuli and send signal to the muscles and nerve tissues. So the muscles have electrical excitability, the contractibility, which is what is meant by contractility. So the contractility basically is ability of muscle tissues to contract forcefully when they stimulated by an action potential. So when the muscle contract, it generates tension, a force of contraction. So while pulling on its attachment point. So extensibility. So extensibility means the ability of muscle tissue to stretch without being damaged. So the extensibility allows muscle to contract forcefully even if it's already stretched. Elasticity. Elasticity means the ability of muscle tissue to return to its original length and shape after contraction or extension. This elasticity will help to muscle tissue to come to its original normal position. So for study purpose, we can classify muscles. We can classify depending upon the presence or absence of striations. And we can classify them upon the control. And also we can classify the muscle tissue upon the situation where the muscle tissue is situated. So depending on striation. So depending upon the presence or absence of cross striations. So in here, you can see cross striations. So they are striated muscles, but these muscles does not have cross striations and they are plain. So they are striated muscles. So the muscles can be divided into two groups. They are striated and non-striated muscles. You can see it clearly in this photograph. So striated muscles. These are the striations. So striated muscles is the muscle which has a large number of cross striations, the transverse lines. So here also you can see striations. So the examples for striated muscles are skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle. Not striated muscles. So in here, there are no striations, no cross striations. So they do not have cross striations. So they are called non-striated muscles. So they are basically plain muscles. Examples are smooth muscle. So they usually found in the walls of the visceral organs. Depending upon the control. So as we talked previously, we can classify muscle tissue depending upon the control. So they are classified into voluntary and involuntary muscles. Voluntary muscles. So the muscles which can be controlled by our own will are called voluntary muscles. So the skeletal muscles are the voluntary muscles. So they are basically innervated by somatic nerves. As examples, skeletal muscles like our biceps, triceps, they are controlled by voluntary. We can control them by our own will. Involuntary muscles, we can't control them by our own will. So they are the cardiac muscle and smooth muscles. We can't control our heart rate by our own will. And we can't control this action of smooth muscles by our own will. So they are involuntary muscles. These are some examples. So voluntary muscles you can control consciously, like those in your arms, biceps, triceps, legs, and they allow us to perform activities like walking. We can control that by our own will. The examples are neck muscles, tricep, facial muscles, abdominal muscles, facial muscle. We can control our smile So there are other type is involuntary muscles. They operate automatically. We can't control them. So they are found in the heart and digestive system. Cardiac muscles in digestion. We can't control our digestion by our own will. It's spontaneous and it doesn't need the control. Okay. And muscles in kidney, muscles in lungs, those all are the involuntary muscles. Depending upon the situation, we can classify muscles like where they are situated. The skeletal muscles, cardiac muscles, and smooth muscles. So now these are the smooth muscles. They are plain and they do not have cross striations like cardiac and skeletal muscles. You can see the striation clearly. And in smooth muscles, the nuclei are centrally located. And also in cardiac muscles, also nuclei are centrally. But in skeletal muscles, you can see the nuclei are in periphery. Okay. And in cardiac muscles, the muscle fibers are branched. But skeletal muscle fibers are parallel to each other. Further, in coming slides, we are going to describe deeply about these changes. So first, we are going to talk about skeletal muscle. So skeletal muscle is usually situated in association with bones, which form the skeletal system. So skeletal muscle is usually base, form the 40 to 50% of body mass, and they are voluntary. As we talked previously, they can be controlled by our own will, and they are striated. They have cross striations. So they are supplied by somatic nerves. That's why they have voluntary control. And the fibers of skeletal muscles are arranged in parallel. They are not branched. And muscle fibers are attached to tendons on either end. And skeletal muscles are anchored to the bones by the tendons. So, skeletal muscles, they are long and cylindrical. And they have striated fibers, many peripherally located nuclei. We talked about that previously. And they have voluntary control. And they are supplied by somatic nerves. So the location of skeletal muscle usually they are attached to bones by tendons. And the functions, they control motion, posture, heat production, and protection. So the skeletal muscle, this muscle is attached to the bone by tendons. Okay. So when the structure of skeletal muscle, there is muscle fiber, endomysium, perimysium, blood vessels, and epimysium. So there are cross striations and they are not branched, and nuclei are peripherally located, and the muscle fiber is cylindrical shape, and the fibers are parallel to each other. They are the important points about skeletal muscle. So these are the skeletal muscles. So they are attached to bone by tendons. In both ends, they are attached to bone by tendons. This is the muscle mass, and this is the muscle structure. Mass or tissue. Muscle mass or muscle tissue is made up of a large number of individual muscle cells or myocytes. These muscle cells are commonly called muscle fibers because they are long and slender in appearance. And the skeletal muscle fibers are multinucleate, and they are arranged parallel to one another, some connective tissue in between. There is some connective tissue in between. Okay. The muscle mass is separated from neighboring tissues by a thick fibrous tissue here known as fascia. And beneath this fascia, muscle is covered by a connective tissue sheath. This is called epimysium. This is called epimysium. And in the muscle fibers are arranged in various groups like bundles or fasciculi. These bundles are called fasciculi. This is a fascicle. And the connective tissue sheath that covers each fascicula is called perimysium. And the muscle fiber is covered by a connective tissue layer called the endomysium. So the muscle fiber, it is covered by endomysium, and the muscle fibers connect with each other and form the fascicle, a bundle of muscle fiber. So the fascicle is covered by perimysium, and the fascicles form with each other and form the muscle, and the whole muscle is covered with epimysium. See, is illustrated: tendon, muscle mass, muscle fasciculus, muscle fiber in central part. These are the covering layers. So, muscle fiber. Each muscle cell or muscle fiber is cylindrical in shape. So, average length is about 3 centimeters, and the diameter can be varied. As we saw previously, muscle fibers are attached to a tough cord of connective tissue called tendon. Through the tendon, it connects to the bone, and tendon is in turn attached to the bone. And tendon of some muscles is thin and flat, stretched, but they are tough. Okay, the tough type of tendon is called aponeurosis, and each muscle fiber is enclosed by a cell membrane, which is called plasma membrane, that lies beneath the endomysium. So the cell membrane, the plasma membrane, is also called sarcolemma, and the cytoplasm of the muscle is known as sarcoplasm. So basically, the structures embedded within the sarcoplasm are nuclei, myofibril, Golgi apparatus, mitochondria, sarcoplasmic reticulum, ribosomes, glycogen droplets, and occasional lipid droplets. You mainly know these things. This is the structure of a muscle fiber. So the sarcolemma, it is the cell membrane of the muscle fiber. The sarcolemma consists of a true cell membrane, which is called the plasma membrane, and an outer coat layer made up of thin layer of polysaccharide material, which contains thin collagen fibril. At the end of the muscle fiber, the surface layer of the sarcolemma fuses with the tendon fiber. So the tendon fiber in turn collect into a bundle to form the muscle tendons, which is inserted into the bones. We already discussed these points. The myofibril. So the myofibril is each muscle fibers contains several to hundred thousands of myofibrils. And the myofibril or myofibril are the fine parallel filaments present in sarcoplasm of the muscle cells. And the sum of the myofibrils are arranged in groups. They are called coherent areas of field. So each muscle fiber, myofibril is composed of about 1 to 500 adjacent myosin filaments and about 300 actin filaments. So they are the one here for the muscle contraction, those myosin filaments and actin filaments. So it contains two types of protein filament. They are thick filaments and thin filaments. Thick filaments are composed of myosin, and the thin filaments are usually composed of actin, troponin, and tropomyosin. And the striations we saw in cardiac and skeletal muscle. These are produced by the alternating light and dark filaments. So the skeletal muscle is composed of muscle cell. Muscle cells is composed of myofibrils. In myofibrils, there are thin filaments and thick filaments. Thick filaments are myosin, and the thin filaments is actin. This unit, thick and thin filaments, called and form the sarcomere. These thin filaments and thick filaments are the one cause the striations in the muscle. So our next one is cardiac muscle. So cardiac muscles form the musculature of the heart, and these are striated and involuntary. We can't control the action of cardiac muscles by our own will, and the cardiac muscles are supplied by autonomic nerve fibers. So this is the structure of cardiac muscles. They have cross striations, and the nuclei are centrally located, and the fibers are branched. So there is branch striated fibers. One or two centrally located nuclei. One or two centrally located nuclei. and they have involuntary control. Usually they are in the heart muscles. The function is pumps blood to all parts of the body. In smooth muscle. Our last topic is smooth muscle. So smooth muscle is situated in association with viscera, and they are also called visceral muscle because of that. And they are different from skeletal and cardiac muscles in many aspects because they doesn't have cross striations. And smooth muscle is supplied by autonomic nerve fibers, and they form the main contractile unit wall of the various visceral organs. Example like stomach. So smooth muscles are spindle shape. But spindle shape, it means the thickest in middle and tapering at both ends. Like thickest in middle and tapering at both ends. And they are non-striated fibers and with one centrally located nucleus. Usually have only one nucleus. And they have involuntary control. So the locations are iris of the eye, walls of hollow internal structures such as blood vessels, airways to lungs, stomach, intestine, gallbladder, urinary bladder, uterus, like that. And the function is motion. Motion means they constrict blood vessels and airways, and they can propulse the foods to GI tract and the contraction of urinary tract, urinary bladder. Smooth muscles. They have one central located nuclei, fibers are spindle shaped, and they doesn't have cross striation, and they are not branch. So now we are going to talk about a brief summary about these muscle tissues. So we talk about three main types: skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscles. So skeletal muscle connect to the skeleton and other structures through tendons, and they are help with movements and stability. They are the only one voluntary. Both cardiac and smooth muscle. Cardiac muscles are the walls of heart, and they contract in rhythmic way to pump blood. Smooth muscles are made walls of blood vessels, hollow organs, and both these cardiac and smooth muscles are involuntary. And these skeletal and cardiac muscles have cross striations, but smooth muscle doesn't have cross striations. Both skeletal and cardiac muscles have multinuclear, but the smooth muscle have only one nucleus. And these two have cylindrical shaped muscle fibers, but the smooth muscles are spindle shaped. So they are the basically main differences in these muscle three types. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you.